Maybe you've noticed this lately. You're always the one being nice. The one giving men the benefit of the doubt. The one who keeps peace, holds back your real thoughts, and acts like you're unbothered, even when something inside you is screaming. Maybe you've spent years trying to be the cool girl, the understanding one, the one who doesn't make a scene. And for what? So a man can walk all over your silence and call it chill. If this is you, you already know what it feels like to swallow your truth because you don't want to push him away. You know exactly what it's like to replay conversations in your head thinking, why didn't I speak up? Why did I let that slide? Why do I keep acting like I'm okay when I'm not? Maybe this feels familiar. You try to be kind, patient, or supportive, but somehow you're the one left feeling ignored. You're the one who gives and gives while he gives you the bare minimum in return. And the worst part, you blame yourself. You think, maybe if I'm nicer, maybe if I stay calm, maybe if I don't ask for too much. But you already know where that road leads. It leads to men taking your softness for weakness. It leads to men assuming you'll put up with anything because you always have. It leads to you losing a piece of yourself every time you pretend something doesn't bother you. And deep down, there's a louder voice, the voice you've been suppressing, the one whispering, I can't keep doing this. I'm tired of being nice to men who don't deserve it. So let me ask you something. What if the thing you think you need to do to keep a man is the exact thing pushing him away? And what if doing the opposite is what finally gives you the power you've been missing? Most men think being nice is the safe move. They think if they're agreeable, patient, and endlessly understanding, the world will reward them for it. But here's the truth. Most guys never hear niceness is not strength. Niceness is not leadership. And niceness, when it's coming from fear, is the quickest way to lose respect from everyone around you, especially other men. You might have been raised to believe that being conflict-free makes you a good man, that if you just keep the peace, people will value you. But calm, grounded masculinity doesn't come from avoiding tension. It comes from holding your frame when tension appears. If you're honest with yourself, you've probably noticed this. Every time you say yes when you want to say no, every time you hold back your opinion because you don't want to upset anyone, every time you choose comfort over truth, you feel yourself shrinking a little. That shrinking is the cost of being nice. If this is you, understand something clearly. Men don't respect men who fold. They respect men who stand. Not men who bark the loudest, not men who dominate the room, but men who are internally anchored, men who say what they mean, men who draw a line and actually protect it. That's where authority comes from. Certainty, not charm. One of the core masculine principles most guys never learn is this: boundaries are not harsh, they're healthy. When you protect your time, your values, and your self-respect, you're not being rude, you're being reliable. Another principle you've probably never been taught is this: decisiveness is more valuable than being liked. When you choose clarity over approval, you become the kind of man others naturally follow. So if niceness has been your strategy, understand why it hasn't worked. You weren't being kind, you were being afraid, and fear never earns respect. The moment you stop performing for acceptance and start living from conviction, everything about the way men respond to you changes. He remembers the moment it shifted. A late evening, streetlights glowing like tired eyes, and he was standing outside a cafe waiting for a man who'd promised he'd be 5 minutes. It had already been 30. People walked past him, the cold wind brushing his jacket, but he stayed because that's who he'd always been, the reliable one, the patient one, the nice one. Inside, he kept telling himself, it's fine, don't make a big deal. Just let it go. But that voice wasn't calm. It was scared. Scared of being seen as difficult. Scared of losing the friendship. Scared that if he ever showed someone they'd crossed a line, they'd walk away. Finally, the man showed up. Cheerful, unapologetic, acting like nothing happened. And he laughed, slapped him on the back, and said, "You're a good guy, bro. You always get it." But something in that moment stung. Not the lateness, not the disrespect. It was the realization that he'd trained people to treat him like this. He'd taught them that his time didn't matter. He'd taught them that his discomfort was acceptable if it kept the peace. Walking home, the night felt louder than usual. Cars hummed, distant chatter floated through the air. But his mind was silent, the kind of silence that only comes when you've finally had enough. He replayed 100 moments just like this, the jokes he laughed at even when they cut deep, the favors he said yes to when every part of him wanted to say no, the conversations where he nodded along just to avoid tension. And for the first time, a different thought rose. What if I'm not being nice? What if I'm being small? The world around him blurred as that truth sank in, because the story wasn't really about that night or that guy. It was about every moment he'd ignored himself to keep another man comfortable. And the part of him that had been quiet for years finally whispered back, "Never again." A lot of men walk around with this quiet misunderstanding. They think being nice makes them safe. They think if they're agreeable, flexible, and always the one to understand, other men will respect them more. But that belief is built on fear, not truth. The reality is this: people don't respect the version of you that abandons himself. They respect the version of you that stands on something. One of the biggest lies men believe is this: if I don't push back, things won't escalate. But the opposite is true. When you let things slide, when you swallow irritation, when you pretend something didn't bother you, you aren't preventing conflict, you're postponing it. And when it finally arrives, it's always bigger, messier, and aimed straight at your sense of worth. Silence doesn't keep the peace. It just keeps you invisible. Another false belief. If I'm easygoing, they'll value me. No. People value what has standards. They value what has a line. They value what has a backbone. The man who never says no becomes the man no one thinks about. That's not kindness. That's erasure. Nice guys don't finish last. Men with no boundaries do. And there's a deeper belief almost no man admits out loud. If I'm firm, I'll lose them. Whether it's a friend, a coworker, a brother, or someone you've looked up to, you think that if you speak your truth, they'll pull away. But here's the awakening: anyone who walks away because you showed strength was never standing with you in the first place. The men who matter don't leave when you stand up. They show up. They adjust. They respect you more. You don't need to stop being kind. You need to stop being afraid, because the moment you stop shrinking to keep other men comfortable, you discover the version of yourself you were supposed to become. The 1% headman isn't harsh, rude, or confrontational. He's simply anchored. This is what he understands: a man's value isn't measured by how easy he is to deal with. It's measured by how deeply he stands in who he is. He isn't nice to keep the peace. He's respectful because it reflects his standards, not because he's afraid of losing someone's approval. Most men react to pressure. The 1% headman responds from presence. When another man crosses a line, he doesn't smile it off or pretend it didn't matter. He feels the discomfort, but he doesn't betray himself to avoid it. This is what sets him apart. He treats his own boundaries as non-negotiable, not because he's rigid, but because he knows self-respect is the foundation of every interaction. This is how he leads with presence, not pressure. He doesn't raise his voice to show power. He raises his standards. He doesn't demand respect. He embodies it. The 1% headman knows that when he stays rooted in truth, the right men align with him naturally. He's not nicer than you. He's not tougher than you. He's just more loyal to himself than to anyone's comfort. It happens in a quiet moment. The kind you don't plan, the kind that sneaks up on you when the world finally stops demanding your attention. Maybe you're sitting alone in your room. Maybe you're driving with the window cracked open. Maybe you're staring at your reflection longer than usual, but something in the air feels different. Lighter, sharper, honest. You replay a familiar scene in your head. A man talking over you, dismissing you, using your patience like it was endless. And for the first time, you don't defend him. You don't soften the memory. You don't say, "Die, it wasn't that bad." Instead, you feel the weight of every moment you abandoned yourself just to be agreeable. Then something shifts, not loudly, not dramatically, just a slow, unmistakable rising. You realize you weren't being nice, you were negotiating your worth. You were shrinking so someone else didn't have to grow. And when that truth lands, it doesn't come with anger. It comes with clarity. You feel your spine straighten a little. You feel your breath settle. You feel a part of you thought you lost return. In that stillness, there's a decision, quiet but absolute. You will no longer treat your boundaries like suggestions. You will no longer apologize for expecting respect. You will no longer disappear to keep others comfortable. You're done being the man who waits. You're becoming the man who remembers. You don't need to be the man who holds it all in anymore. You don't need to keep swallowing your truth just to keep the peace. You've seen what that version of you creates. Tension, resentment, and a life that slowly erases your edges. Now you know the difference between being kind and being compliant. You know that respect isn't earned by bending, but by standing. So here's the shift you've been reaching for. Stop offering your softness to men who mistake it for weakness. Offer your certainty instead, because the moment you honor yourself, the world has no choice but to honor you too.